So, Wade, do you want me
Okay.
to regenerate the question, or do you want to just go ahead and start
Sure.
off with an introduction here?
I'll just fire away. First off, Dave, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that and everything Unbundled's done. What you offer here, it really is number one, just quality service. Not everybody who provides your services provides such quality leads and builds a community. And also, I guess we'll get into it as far as my story goes here in a little bit. Also, is very much scalable either in your area or as I'm trying to prove over the last 6 months, maybe a particular area and just wash it all over the state and see what happens. But my name is Wade Goertz. I run Goertz Law. And the last just over 9 years, been working mostly on estate planning, kind of the bread and butter, keeping families out of probate court, making sure their affairs are in order. The first 2 years out of law school, I went back to school in my 30s. The first 2 years out of law school, I got into, believe it or not, Medicaid consulting, which is essentially clients are getting very close to needing to move into a Medicaid facility or have just moved in and they're trying to figure out, hey, how do we do this without burning through all of our assets in order to pay Medicaid their reimbursement after our stay here, and eventually shifted into more of this focus because I feel like it's definitely a little more satisfying to catch more people on the front end of that and take care of so many things before leading up to a situation like that. Number one is I tell clients all the time it's the most common thing in Texas, basically, to get into just a half step up of estate planning to eliminate probate from your family's life. And hey, if you end up needing probate on the back end, if you did not know that ahead of time and didn't get yourself into a bread and butter type of revocable trust or living trust, then that's okay. But we focus primarily on that for a while now. But for a few years there, I actually got into the seminar game at restaurants and different event areas where a lot of mailers go out and you end up serving fajitas to 40 to 60 people and tell them all about estate planning, what they may or may not need. And then started doing that with another firm of guy I knew years back, and about 6 months before COVID. And once that rolled around, kind of shut down what we were doing. And then let's see, as far as the practice goes, I've been a sole proprietor pretty much this whole time. I've been a full-time parent for the last 3.5 years. Which occupied just quite a bit of time up until basically a few weeks ago when she got into full-time pre-K. Wasn't into it before that, but I was sole proprietor leading up to this, and I honestly don't remember if I contacted you or if Unbundled contacted me, but it came together just perfectly and said, hey, for someone in my situation where, between my free time parenting, not so much. Maybe for the first 7 or 8 months this year, my free time was maybe 3 or 4 hours a week, maybe a little more to try to get practice rolling. And Unbundled, without a doubt, just made that very doable. Not only that, but even before my schedule freed up in September, it was still doable to scale up a little bit, test out estate planning. Can this scale up across Texas? Can this scale up to other states? Before we even get into other areas that may have better revenue potential, I wanted to test that out because that's what fit my schedule, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yes, indeed. Okay, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dave Aarons. I'm the CEO of Unbundled Attorney. I should introduce myself as well, and welcome to everybody to this Fireside Chat. Wade's just been giving an introduction to a little bit of his background and how we kind of arrived at this beginning of this journey with Unbundled Attorney. And it's been quite the journey indeed, working with Mr. Dolantz, your dedicated support attorney, and kind of building and scaling these up with Mr. Dolantz is actually with us today. What's up, Jack?
Hey, Jack.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Right on. So maybe you could just take us through those the first early days of when you kind of got rolling with Jack. I don't actually recall if you had started out with serving the entire state of Texas, or if you had started off with local regions first and then kind of stepped up to do the entire state, and what that initial process looked like. And maybe you can walk us through those initial steps and then we can, start to unpack, how it is that you have been able to serve clients across the state of Texas and some other states as well. And by the way, everyone that's joining us here for the Fireside Chat, Wade and I are going to have a discussion for a little while here. I'm going to ask some questions and just kind of guide the conversation and kind of highlight a lot of things that would probably be on most of your minds. And then at a certain point, we're going to open it up to a live Q&A. That's the spirit of the Fireside Chat. So those of you that are joining us live here on Zoom will be able to unmute and ask questions as we go. If you have a specific question, I believe there's a way to just kind of raise your hand, or you can put the question in the chat, or otherwise just let us know that you have a question in the chat, and then I can call on you and you can ask it to Wade or myself at any point towards the end of our Fireside Chat today. So yeah, with that, Wade, maybe you could just talk us through how we first got this thing rolling and what your initial coverage was and how we evolved things to cover an entire state and then multiple states from there.
Yeah. Well, I love the unbundled story, but I'll try to keep it brief. The short of it is, I think we were real close to connecting a couple of years back, but the estate planning package of leads also included a couple of things I didn't do or didn't have time for. I didn't do or have time for guardianship or probate, and I think those were connected a few years back.
Originally. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, if I came on board for estate planning leads, I would also be buying, 2/3 of my leads that didn't connect. But the good news is, I think November we reconnected, and turns out estate planning was available, and turned out money back guarantee to get started. I said, okay, well, I haven't done business before, but I have a good feeling about it.
Well, and to give a little bit of context there, Wade, is we had a lot of attorneys that had shared with us, hey, we do estate planning, but we don't do probate. We do probate, we don't do guardianships. Some lawyers did all three, but and then guardianships originally was under family law, so that wasn't too exciting either. So we have since split out, as you know, as you're alluding to, have split out those practice areas so that attorneys that want to just do estate planning can do estate planning. If they want to just do probate, they can do probate. If they want to just do guardianship, they can just do guardianship, or they can do a combination thereof. Estate planning and probate is a very common combination for a lot of our attorneys to do both of those, and then some of them also do the guardianships. But as it is in your case, right now you've been primarily just focusing on estate planning, and that's been working fine.
Yeah, and that's been working fine. I can see that being a tough decision too. A few years back, maybe we just find attorneys that do all of these things, and they'll have a higher success rate. But I guess by 2024, that had hashed out, because when I started, I'll tell you how it looked, as specific as I can remember. Giving that a shot the first month, I thought, well, it'd be nice to make money back and maybe a few extra bucks, another client or two. We'll see what happens. And I think we did pretty well that first month. No later than March or April, I think we're still on just DFW, spending, I think, $2,000, maybe $3,000 a month in leads, but we were well north of 4-buy or 5-buy returns, 12 or 13,000. Not numbers that'll blow your hair back, but the ROI is very interesting. Just how far could you scale this, and it would remain 3 or 4 or even beyond that. So by, I'd say, April, we had expanded a little bit from a few counties in DFW to all the surrounding counties, and then half of Texas. And I'd say, I want to say by April, pretty much all of Texas. And the big difference to me, honestly, kind of on the fly when we first started doing it, I thought, okay, well, if someone's going to be calling from all over Texas, they need to hear in your voice that you do this every day. This is not some brand new thing. You're very casually doing this because you've done it 100 times. And in a roundabout way, you have, not exactly like this with the virtual signing filing services, but we knew they were available and thought, hey, let's try to put it together. And we started fielding calls from all over Texas with no intention of meeting. And that ramped up quickly. Probably today we're at about 80% or more of our clients that we never meet in person. So we started pitching it like that, and we got just as aggressive as we could, staying on top of both however many estate planning leads are available in Texas, just to any county at somewhere in April or maybe a little after, a month or two after, just any county in Texas. Let's see where that goes, see how fast the leads stack up, see if the closing rate remains kind of the same or drops a little bit. And ultimately, over those next few months, we learned that the ROI is still very good. at least for myself, it was over a 2 by maybe 2.5 on a good month. Whatever we were spending on leads, maybe up to 10 or 12,000 sometimes. But we would, I don't think we've had a month yet where we haven't at least done double what we spent.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about in terms of the initial retained amount or the total amount, or like just in terms of like leads in versus cash in, or
right? And
some people pay like a deposit and do some payment plans and so forth. So
sure. I guess we should clarify that too. First off, just how much I'm spending on leads versus how much versus how much we're grossing. It's been at least double the whole time, and that is all over Texas. If you're doing it locally in a city the size of Dallas, we were doing, I think, it straight out of the gate 4 or 5 by. It's a little more comfortable. Pretty much everyone you talk to is within 30 minutes, maybe a little more. But as we branched out across Texas, I thought, okay, closing rate's going to drop. A lot of people are going to think that's just too far. The virtual service sounds a little too new and too techy to me, so we're not going to do it. But it didn't drop so far that it was not profitable or not doable. So, so I think, and as far as estate planning goes, there isn't too much of an ongoing engagement with anything we do. I looked at the clientele you could provide as prospects and what we do and try to keep things as simple as possible. Our bread and butter is either a basic wills package or a basic revocable trust package to keep them out of probate court, keep family out of probate court. And very rarely, less than 10% for sure, maybe less than 5% of our clients do anything else, whether it be a special needs trust or Medicaid trust or anything along those lines. I think, if you're using unbundled leads locally near a major metro, if you just don't know how or can't handle those types of leads, that's not going to cut too far into your ROI.
Okay. So let's just talk just a little bit about, so when you originally were working with the clients locally, obviously you wouldn't get the objection or potential concern from clients around them about the distance from your office and so forth. Were you kind of taking a more face-to-face approach where they were coming in and you guys were doing kind of estate plans in person? Were you enrolling over the phone, using Zoom? How was the kind of the initial approach to contacting folks and interfacing with them when they were local to you? And then did that evolve or change? Well, obviously it probably had to if you were doing anything in person physically. But then how did that shift at that point, if at all?
Yeah, that shift, it was pretty quick. Basically, as they come in, as the prospects come in, you contact them, you talk to them. Quick decision, you let them know up front, hey, you're fairly local, you're within an hour. If you want to, by all means, come into the office, schedule an appointment. But I'll tell you right now, some of our clients, even in the Dallas area, just prefer to not go anywhere once they know they can do this from home, and give them a choice at that point. Let them know that, and we do have clients, the clients less than 10 miles away occasionally who find out that it can be done from home and just decide to do it like that. And I think some other areas of law, at least I've heard, you can get as far as the signing and pay and get started on their work without actually meeting and engaging in the work, depending on whether or not you need to go to court. It really depends. But with what we do with estate planning, at least in Texas, we're finding out that it's not mandatory that you meet just about any of your clients in person. It's far easier in some other states, and we can get to that. It's far easier in other states, I guess, to at least it seems like it. I say that, and we're talking to somebody with less than 6 months experience trying to get this rolling in other states. But we found that whether it's the atmosphere, the general buyer attitude, are they going to want to meet in person or not? In Texas, it seems a little more laid back. That out of all the people I talk to and tell them, hey, actually, I'm 500 miles away, but we work with clients all over Texas, so don't worry about it. I'd say 1 in 5 are just going to exit the conversation at that point, and the rest you've got a shot at.
Okay. Well, and I like the way that you kind of present it to them, where it's like that they can actually, even many of your clients, even that are locally to your office, prefer the option where they can do it from home, right? Where they don't have to like come down and take the time off work and make the trip down to the office and and then kind of shuffle all the papers in person when you've been able to enable them to be able to handle this process on their own time, from the comfort of their own home. And that, I think, speaks to the value of a virtual practice is not only, of course, that you get to work virtually, but also the client gets to work virtually, right? They get to interface with you in a way that doesn't require kind of a back and forth physical presence. And for a myriad of different circumstances, that could be a real benefit to a lot of folks, especially, that might be, incapacitated or they're filing something for someone who's incapacitated and they're caring for somebody's needs, or they're elderly, or whatever it might be the circumstances where, getting in a vehicle and coming down physically may or may not be something that's actually that they're happy about. Especially I've been to Dallas. I know how the traffic is there. So save them the gridlock.
It's funny you mentioned that. A lot of people are receptive to that. The first half of that idea, very receptive to it. Oh, okay. Well, we've all lived through COVID. No matter how old they are, they've probably been on a Zoom meeting. So you can describe the rest of the process to them like that, sort of a Zoom plus DocuSign situation. And to the other half of your point there, quite a few clients call in that have reached a point where figuring something out locally that's not an option anymore, and they're a little bit desperate because mom and dad are not mobile anymore, and maybe even in a facility. And we're able to tell them, yes, not only can we help, but we can expedite it if you like. I tell them up front, hey, I don't want to be too direct or a little frank with you, but exactly what is the situation like? Because if it's something where we need to turn it around within 24 hours, or we've done that a few times this year. I know we helped a younger veteran. His wife called in on, I believe, Sunday, and it was not a good shape, kind of a desperate situation at the hospital, not expecting to last much longer. And they wanted to, quote unquote, get their estate planning done so that they didn't end up in probate, and make sure that the cash wasn't tied up so she could take care of the kids. And the short of it is that, yes, I don't need him to leave the hospital bed. I need him to be conscious, and I need him to be mentally there. But we can get that all wrapped up, and we can do it pretty quickly. So essentially somebody there, whether it's him or mom or dad's in the facility, or they're just at home and can't get around very well, if one of the kids or a friend can sort of help them with the computer or iPad or even a phone, then in Texas, we can get that done.
Okay. So let's unpack some of the elements that make enrolling or servicing a client virtually possible. Because, any of the attorneys that are watching this or even participating live today may or may not want to transition to building an entirely virtual practice. Your practice is not entirely virtual. You still have your local office and meet some clients in person and so forth. But having the capability to effectively service somebody that doesn't necessarily have to come and physically meet with you in XYZ practice area is enabled by a series of kind of tools and technology and instruments that can facilitate your ability to enroll them, intake, deliver them documents, get signatures, and also interface with them, face to face, as you're talking about. So maybe you can just kind of unpack some of the tools and instruments that make this kind of virtual engagement possible.
Sure. As far as signings go and executing documents, I tell clients when we're talking at first that it's just like any other estate planning. You're going to have two appointments. That first one, instead of coming into the office, we'll just talk on the phone or a Zoom. And I need to ask you questions for 15 to 30 minutes to make sure that I've got everything correctly. And at this level of estate planning, that's about all you need. And we're not talking about terribly complex asset pictures, many businesses, and generational trusts. We're just talking about making sure that the family doesn't go through probate, maybe doesn't have any assets lost in the picture. So it's fairly doable that quickly as far as the first appointment goes. And I tell them, hey, the second appointment, it's a lot like doing a real estate deal from out of state, sight unseen. And we're all going to join. I describe it as basically a Zoom plus DocuSign situation. And to be specific, the one we use more often than not is called BlueNotary.com. Virtual. I've got a local notary here that started as my local notary that would show up to the office during signings And we started in with the virtuals. She was familiar with Blue Notary, and virtual notarizations, I think, have been around. Don't quote me on this. I want to say federally it was 12 years, and then state by state, pretty much all of them, maybe 9 or 10 years ago. And one point I would make regarding what state you're in is that the language in the state laws is slightly different regarding virtual notarizations for every state I've looked into. And what I mean by that is, if you look into it in New York, you're going to get some pretty vague language about whether or not the notary has to be physically present in New York, even if they're not meeting with the client. So meaning New York, in a roundabout way, wants the notary to be in New York, regardless of if they meet in person.
Okay.
Georgia is another example. Georgia is so close to the line that you don't want to step on any gray areas. So we basically make a couple of offers. If we're talking about estate planning specifically, maybe you can translate this to whatever area of practice you offer, and maybe a notarization you already do. But a couple other options, tell them, hey, if the virtual isn't going to work out, we've got a couple of other options. One of which is I will send you a mobile notary, and I need you to grab 2 friends or neighbors who are not parties in the documents and make sure they're there when I send you the mobile notary. And from time to time, it comes up that clients really want to sign off, or it's a little more urgent than waiting on the mobile notary appointment. I'll just be honest with them, tell them, hey, you can head straight to a UPS store. If we can't arrange the virtual or you can't wait for the mobile notary, you can head to a UPS store. Probably have a notary on staff. A couple of employees will be the witnesses, and you call me at that time and I'll walk you through it. Plus, you're at a UPS store at that time. Once it's all executed, ask them to scan it in and email it to me. So with the number of leads, and clients we have in Texas, it's that comes up probably once a month, once every 6 weeks. There's something went wrong with grandma's laptop or something.
Could you give a little context on like roughly how many leads you service on a,
Sure. Good question. I'm supposed to look at that, have a better idea, but I would say, I think in the last 2 weeks, I want to say after credit refunds, I want to say probably 68, 70 leads.
Yeah, so about 5 to 8 a day, something like that, somewhere in that range, depending.
Yeah, and it really goes up and down. I mean, we've had days where back-to-back days, to Unbundled's credit, we've had back-to-back days with 17, 18 leads, and then the rest of the week kind of levels off. But you do have to be prepared for that. I mean, if we get into that conversation, if I learned anything about these leads, it's that Unbundle is correct about just getting in touch with pretty much all of them as fast as you can, whether it's yourself or an admin working with you or automate it. If you use, there's a couple of different things you can use, whether it's your intake system and CRM. If that automatically does it already, that's great. I happen to use Clio, which I think is great for a lot of things, but that very first step where you want it to contact people automatically, it doesn't do that unless you rope in something like Zapier or another service to grab that email and parse it and send them an email, bare minimum. If not, grab the number and send them a text as well. So when leads are jacked up on days like that, where you have back-to-back days, still meeting with clients, still parenting, still trying to not let these leads fly off into the wind, bare minimum, grab the lead and either shoot them an email or a text just as soon as you can. Make sure that there's some form of contact that you attempted. Do you make a better attempt later that day or whenever you have a chance, of course. But the good idea is to let them know that, hey, when you put your information in Unbundled and you hit submit, it worked because somebody contacted you almost immediately, even if you don't have a full conversation right then.
Yeah.
So
and there are some intake systems that can send that text and the email automatically. Unfortunately, Clio Grow was not built on an automation platform. There are some others like Lawmatics and MyCase and some others that have the integrations with text messaging. We are actually developing an integration with MyCase. So if anyone's using MyCase, you can smile and be happy because we're going to have an integration there pretty soon. But Clio is very powerful in the sense that it's button pushing. So you can just send out the templates with the client's information merged in. We integrate with Clio so that, when a lead comes in, you can quick intake it, and then the fields are automatically filled out in your templates with their name and practice area and however you want to merge that information into your templates to make that process more streamlined in the way that Wade's described, to be able to get that outreach to the folks in as close to real time as you can. Obviously, a phone call would be great too, but you can't always do the call in real time. So, but those emails, that email and a text message certainly is going to validate for the client. Okay, great. I've submitted a request. Here's an attorney getting back to me. And then, one of the other things that, you can potentially explore is getting an integration with Calendly. Calendly is one that a lot of our attorneys use in the sense that it gives the client the option to schedule an appointment directly on the calendar, even if you're not available to talk to them right then and there, or they're not available to talk to you right then and there, so that you can kind of get that call scheduled and begin that kind of, that conversation around what they're needing and get them moving forward in the process in an automated way.
If nothing else, whether it's estate planning or another practice area, if nothing else, when that email comes in, I click on their emails, so the new composed email pops up, and I've got signatures built so that it's either an intro or something else, basically a full intro with Calendly link and maybe even pricing. If it's that type of lead, if they mention they want our bread and butter, then they get that signature. So it's not automated, but we did boil it down to a 5-second process.
Yep. And then I would imagine for your fee agreement, so when you have that conversation with them, the initial enrollment conversation, whether it be on Zoom or over the phone, if they're virtually, and they want to, potentially enroll for your services, maybe just walk us through how you process that payment and then get that fee agreement signed.
Yeah. I'll tell you where I learned this. The seminar game, they had a nationwide firm that does, I don't know how many states they're in, but they do the seminars. And the short of it is, at the end of the seminar, they say, hey, we provide quote unquote procrastination incentives. And if you move a little faster than chewing on it for 6 months, how about we give you a deadline 2 or 3 days out? If you move that quickly, then the fee comes down just a little bit. And in estate planning, if you can get that across in sort of a cute way, because it's not necessarily urgent almost ever. There are cases where someone's in a facility and they need something right now. But that's less than 5% probably of the people that will call in. It's usually somewhere between semi-urgent and, hey, we've been thinking about this for 3 years and I'm kind of messing around on it. So they kind of like to hear that, hey, it's generally about this much. You call me back. Today's Wednesday. Call me back by Friday. Okay, it'll be this much.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to help.
Can you give an example of that? Like what might be a typical, okay, if you can call back by this time, this would be the reduction in price versus this rate?
Sure. Yeah. Earlier today, the package they're looking at, pretty standard, straightforward living trust with just barely a need for a living trust. There's not a lot to work on as far as their asset pictures. So I quoted them $1,200. Said if you get back to us by Friday and hire us, we'll call that $950. And
okay.
Yeah, and that's a little low end considering, I guess, not terribly low end considering overhead. I don't have an office that I pay for. It's a very nice office that clients tend to like, but it's a shared office space / community center that just kind of looks like a nice office. So the leads and very few other things equate to my overhead. So if someone calls in, they've already seen the advertising that led them there has already said, hey, somewhere between $500 and $1,500, we can solve your problem. And so I try to meet them somewhere in there as long as it makes sense for us. And in Texas,
to be clear about that way, what it says is that they can get started on their case for as low as $500 to $1,500. That's kind of the typical for estate planning. It's a little bit different for criminal. Typically, the deposit there is as low as 20 to 25%. So just so you know, and other attorneys know as well, you're not constrained by that pricing. For example, you could offer
good point,
$2,500 comprehensive trust, but then give them the option to say, well, you could get started for as low as $1,000 as initial deposit, set you up on a payment plan from there. and that, you know,
Sure,
still meets
sure.
the constraints of that starting cost.
Sure. I probably should have clarified that.
Yeah.
A particular
And
case
it's as
like
low
that.
as, meaning it doesn't always have to be, right? Because there's circumstances
Right.
when it may not have fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the bulk of the trusts we were selling earlier in the year were probably 1850.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, in cases like this, that particular one, I probably should have qualified that we reach certain demographics with these prospecting, with this prospecting, and whether it's lower income or if English as a second language or any number of things. I'm finding that I can either say yes to a lower price and get something done that does not take me terribly long, or they can walk.
Mm-hmm.
Also find that they like to haggle quite a bit. I'd probably say minimum 30% of my clients are either foreign born or uh, well, they're quite used to haggling. So
Okay.
wherever they're
Yeah.
from, wherever they're
There's different
from,
cultures around haggling. If you go to Morocco, you're going to be haggling.
yeah, yeah. What I'm finding is I've never been to Vietnam or China or Lagos, but you're going to be haggling if they call you for a revocable trust. So, and it kind of, at some point it's a cost benefit to you. Do you have the time and do you want what will ultimately result in $500 for you? Well, that's your choice. Depending on the trust they want, if they call for a Medicaid trust, I highly recommend closer to $2,000 and push that depending on their asset picture, maybe 2,500. But the bulk of who calls in has a simple asset picture. They just want a revocable trust, and about 30% of those are going to haggle.
Yep. Okay, so I want to ask about two specific things, and then I'm going to open it up for questions for
Sure.
anyone else that's here live. So first is, you talked a little bit about these things not being taking very much time. Do you have either a practice management software, document automation, or any kind of systems in place at this point that can help with streamlining the intake of their kind of documents, information, and then putting that into the forms in a way that speeds up the document preparation process?
Yeah, two things. One is we use Clio Grow for the form submission, document automation. But I will say that at least with estate planning, it's been my experience that they like that first appointment to include a half hour worth of those questions. So maybe you catch a few things, maybe you have some advice. They prefer, and that helps the closing rate. They prefer that basically that intake form and questionnaire is appointment one. They prefer that you are talking about that for a half hour as opposed to, thanks for signing with us. I'm sending you a form. I'll see you at the signing.
Right.
So we don't want to do that. We want to just a little bit of service, let them know that we're in the game, and we did talk to them face to face for at least a half hour, and that's essentially what they're paying for. And what do we do from there? The form, 90% of that plugs straight into the draft, and then there's only a few minutes left. The more simple the asset picture was and the probate we're trying to avoid, the more simple that was, the faster it goes. So that full process, including the appointment with them, might be 30 to 45 minutes.
Is the document automation, like the intake to forms, is that powered by Clio's document automation? Or are you guys using LawYaw, or do you have a third party service that does the document automation side of it? Meaning like taking the client's information, their data that they fill out, or that
Sure.
Wade's team interviews them for, and then gets it into the forms in a streamlined way.
Yeah, and we're at a point right now where we're using it's homegrown with Google Forms and getting it into the templates that I have, whether it's single person revocable trust, married couple revocable, single married irrevocable, the ones we do mostly. That's all a quick process. And two things, we haven't reached a point where we're just so busy that I need to shave off 5 minutes on each of these. So we're going to do that or not? Yes, because if you were any busier, I think, I guess at least with my schedule, I don't know about you, but if we're any busier, then I would probably use LawYaw. I think Clio calls it Draft now.
Yeah.
I would probably use that and just get it done that way. But again, what the clients tend to like that half hour, making sure that we're sort of connecting, get to know each other. And the questionnaire the questions that I'm asking them, I'm essentially filling out their intake form, and that automates
Mm-hmm.
straight into. So 90% of the drafting is done after I'm done talking to them for 30 minutes.
And so just to be clear, so you have a conversation about what their needs, what they're looking to get accomplished, get into, what the steps are going to be involved, and make a recommendation of the package. And then there's an enrollment where there's a payment, there's a fee agreement signed, and then you're immediately transitioning into the intake as all one call. And if so, is that the
I
general
try
flow of
to.
it?
Yeah, I try to. So I'm trying to think of the first few times we did that. Essentially, my wife and I come from the same background. Before law school, that's where we met. It was very heavy, essentially real similar to what Unbundled does, but for just about everybody. Companies like Multi-View and Reach Local, Scorpion sells a lot of leads to
Mhm.
attorneys.
Yeah.
All those companies came from a company that we worked with, and the short of it is, if you got them on the phone and they're interested, are you going to ask for the card or not? So
Yes.
I asked for the card, straight out of the gate, and start talking to, if you hear in their voice that this is a situation that I'm going to chew on for a few days and there's just nothing you can do to change my mind, okay, maybe you'll pump the brakes a little bit. But for most of my clients, by the end of the call, I've already let them know, we've discussed how it works, verified that. Okay, you understand that. Here's how our process works. And okay, if you're ready to get started, by the way, if you hire us, if you want to do it today, I'll do it for this much. And we do take debit or credit cards if you've got that on you. And at that point, I think yesterday we did that, and I just happened to have a reschedule. So we had their first appointment right then and there. We talked for another
Mhm.
20 minutes. I got their questions answered. But most clients, I either don't have time, or we might be talking. Last night I was talking to one at I think 8 or 8:30 that called in. As of today, he's a client. I just looked at his notes as they come in. Say, oh, you want to talk about a living trust? Well, that's a warm lead, so I'm just going to answer.
Mhm.
If I'm
Right off the
I'm not
mobile app, hey? You look in the mobile app or the text message there?
Yeah, that's when leads come in from the 702 number. With any luck, I've already got the alert pulled up, the
Yes.
email, the Unbundled app alert. So I see
Yeah.
So if you're extremely busy and
Cool.
it says, hey, we've got this complicated litigation, I don't even know if I'm a party to this trust. Okay, I'm probably not going to pick that up. But if you're extremely busy and it comes, or it's just late, it's 9 o'clock at night, and it says, hey, living trust, and you get a feeling that either they're aware of what this does and that's why they're calling, maybe just pick up.
Yeah.
At that
It's
point,
really cool that
honestly,
you get the native notification so quickly that even if a live transfer is coming in, you can swipe it, look at the lead, and then decide. Right, that's pretty
right.
powerful. I didn't realize that as a
I
workflow, but it makes
mean,
sense that the notifications are that quick that you can actually look at it and then decide if you're looking at your phone.
yeah. Over this summer, my daughter was not in school 4.5 days a week until second week of September. So over the summer, we had 25 leads a week coming in. It's extremely important to be able to see the scoreboard before you pick up.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
why are they contacting me? Am I in the middle of trust or parenting? Do we have an appointment coming up? And you can just make that call on the fly. How
Yeah.
many? Do I have a few minutes? This looks like a hot lead. Okay, I'm going to go in another room, or just cross my fingers my child doesn't try to jump on the phone yelling at them. With estate planning, I don't know if this is true for every practice area, but with estate planning, that she's just a ringer. If you got a 4 or 5-year-old, just bring them to every client meeting, have her on the phone. Yeah, I take her to in-person meetings from time to time because that's what my wife works from home, and it's not nearly as flexible. She basically has to be here. But me, if we've got an appointment, I also tell clients my brother has an office about an hour from here in a different part of Dallas. And tell clients, hey, if you're closer to that one, I'll meet you there. And she's been to appointments with me there as well.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful, man. So thank you. So let's just talk about one other topic, and then I really do want to open this up for those that are here.
Sure.
Let's just talk about other states and managing attorneys, managing counsel, I think is the way it's referred to in most states. So just describe, hey, you're licensed in Texas. You're doing estate planning. You're doing bankruptcy, you're doing criminal, whatever is the practice area, and you are neighboring another state, but you don't necessarily have a license in that state, how could you still potentially partner or forge a relationship with another office or another attorney in that state where you could actually do business in that state in a way that's mutually beneficial for that attorney, for you, and enables that possibility.
Yeah, I can tell you all about what I've attempted, and you can maybe tell
the
me.
actual implementation, whether the deal works out, is another thing. I mean, of course, but yeah, just the nature of that, how that functions.
Yeah, my first shot at it, I found what was this? Maybe 3.5, 4 months ago. Found a guy that was licensed in 3 states: New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And we decided, okay, well, we'll fire up in New York. There's quite a few people there. As far as demographics we're aiming at, it's not going to be more saturated. So let's just go find out. And straight at what we found out, a couple of things. The juggling, estate planning has an atmosphere to it that is extremely important. I'm putting my affairs in order. If I can at least meet with you in person, then I'm at least dealing with you, right? I'm not getting passed off to 2 or 3 different attorneys. So we spent the first month or so juggling back and forth. Is it better to put you straight away in touch with them, or is it better for me to try to close it and then they just meet you later?
Mm-hmm.
And that honestly, that's to this day kind of back and forth. But generally, it seems to work out. I'm trying to do more full time where I just try to talk to them and close it before they get passed to the attorney either in New York or Georgia, and from there you learn a little bit about the area, what the general attitude is. In Texas, the general attitude, like I said, probably 20% of those clients 300 miles away. I'm sorry, don't want anything to do with you. I want someone in person. In New York, way over half. It's probably reversed. It's probably 70, 80%. Either you're very close, because I'm also not driving an hour and 2.5 blocks away to get to your office. So I need you right on the money and in person. And that's pretty difficult. I think we found more success so far with people just anywhere in Texas, anywhere in New York, upstate New York or Pennsylvania.
Yeah, just try to drive in and maybe working virtually because they don't have as many options in their local area. They're not in like a condensed metro. Hey. Yeah,
and what I found is the faster you can roll into this part of your pitch, letting them know that, hey, we do this virtually from 100 miles away all the time. The faster you can get to that, the better. The only caveat I'd reserve for that is in New York, there's also an atmosphere of not wanting to get scammed that's much higher than anywhere I've found.
I see. Well, for New York, yeah. So let me just kind of paint this a little bit further in terms of like what is the nature of the relationship between like that attorney that had the license in 3 years? Is it like associate of the firm? Is it a partnership? Is it how do you structure that to make sure that from a licensure standpoint, you guys are both on good soil?
The simplest way I learned was to structure it as an of counsel situation where the firm signs them, and then they, for a fee, for a percentage of the gross, they become 100% their liability and issue their matter. Is basically a referral engine at this point, because I haven't gotten to a point where either we can afford that full time, maybe set up shop out there, bring them on as either an associate or a partner. I haven't gotten that far yet. I think if the ROI would have been higher for New York, then we would already be there. But it's a couple of things, whether it's the closing and the virtual they want to meet, and also the fees involved with New York real estate. When it's time to move the home to the trust, in Texas, that's $30, $40. In New York, it's $200 to $400. So now your overall price for the package is north of $2,500. That's where the conversation usually begins. If you come down to $2,200, you're giving them a break at that point.
Yep. Okay. I've got a few more things I could unpack for sure, but I want to take this opportunity to open it up for some questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. You can send a little chat in the chat window, or you can also just unmute and go ahead and ask your question without rushing to the mic. But Whatever way works best for you. I'm scanning for raised hands and so forth, but or you can just hit us in the chat or just unmute yourself and feel free to fire away.
Yeah, fire
Hey,
away.
Lon, what's up, buddy? Hey, Gail. Nice to see you guys. Any questions for Wade here?
Still operating in multi-jurisdictional practice.
Yep. Mr. Spratley? Yeah. Go ahead, Wade.
Yeah, right now we pumped the brakes temporarily in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, but we just fired up in Georgia, or we're just about to fire up in Georgia for estate planning, and we're just started leads for probate in the DFW area. So I keep going back to it, but with my schedule, how that was up until a few weeks ago this year, so about 9 months. What all could I scale? What all could I push a little bit? It had to fit a couple of different criteria. One is I can't be going to court at any given time. I can't be doing one thing or another. There's only so many calls I could handle, but I think that we're at a point now where we want to get into higher grossing areas. Essentially, I'm going to keep estate planning right where it is, maybe grow. We will grow it to additional states, but that's not where the gas is going to be going on the fire. That will be going with probate and criminal and DUI. And I'll start with the same counsel situation for the most part. I think I'm looking for advice, honestly, whether it be from yourself or guys who have done this, grown the practice with probate or criminal DUI, looking for advice on how to fire out of the gate with either a counsel or associate or a friend of yours, or what's the best situation to do that, whether you have the money or not. I happen to be in a situation where a couple of friends are looking at it as just a viable investment opportunity. So I'll be meeting with a CPA in a couple of weeks. Hey, what are my options on how to structure this so we can put it on paper that says, is it a short-term loan that I can pay off? Or is it more of I'm buying a very small percentage of the firm? Or how exactly does this work? And also stay within all the ethical rules?
Yes. Yep. Okay. All right.
Sure.
No problem, Tony. There you go.
Yeah.
Any other questions or other questions for Wade here on building virtual practice, opening up other states, enrolling clients? Otherwise, I will jump in here.
Yeah.
Wade, for attorneys who are considering expanding into other states, how would you recommend that they go about getting started finding candidates that they could hire?
Good question. There's a couple of different routes. Honestly, if you have $100, I would post on Indeed for about a week and give it a $100 boost. And you should get 20 or 30 candidates out of that are sort of a fit. I think last I just did that for estate planning, and about to do that for probate. I think I had in less than a week with just a $10 a day boost. In less than a week, I think we had 25, 30 quality candidates that were plenty to choose from, looking for exactly the right fit. Somebody, I happen to be looking for somebody who's has a full-time deal or their own practice and flexibility. And I need someone who can occasionally take calls in the middle of the day, and it's good with clients in case we have to rope them in to close the deal. And again, that's estate planning. I'd love to hear how that works better for a criminal DUI or a probate. And as far as the arrangement as well, is it better to rope somebody in with estate planning? What I'm finding is obviously your ROI is going to be better if you find somebody who's willing to basically just do the doc prep, or maybe $100 a client, give or take, instead of 20-30% of that client. Because with estate planning, again, with that, there's that basically the interchange between you and the other attorney. You're going to lose some clients there. It's sort of confusing, and how come I'm talking to you and somebody else is going to work on it? And so I think from a sales perspective, it looks like I'm contacting this attorney, and next thing you know, I'm talking to some other attorney. But this one wants me to pay, and he's going to kick me to somebody else. And with the virtual situation with estate planning, it tends to be a little tricky.
Yep. Okay, Joy, I will read your question, and if you have any clarifying points about it, you feel free to unmute as well, and you can speak directly. But she says, brand new to UA, just getting her first lead. Conversation that you talked about, do you have in terms of getting their information to proceed with the preparation of the documents? Is that conversation the free consultation that you're turning it then into the first meeting to develop the plan?
Yes, they're free consults. If they haven't paid yet, it's basically a free consult. I rarely get into a situation where I'm going to charge for the consult and just hope that's good bait to get them in the boat. At that point, I will talk to just about anybody if I have time. Talk to them for a few minutes. Plus, you never know if it's going to develop from a lead that seems a little off course into something that's your bread and butter. But the free consult, I'll talk to them briefly at a certain point, maybe 5 minutes in. I'll sort of cut it off, and I don't mean to be rude. I'm stepping into an appointment or doing something else. Would you like to set an appointment where we could talk about this for 15 to 30 minutes? And there's another transition available there as well. So if you're offering a free consult that develops into a 15+ minute conversation, you should be asking for the card at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is something that, we talk about every day with support calls with all of our unbundled attorneys. Any of our support attorneys are very, very familiar with the enrollment process and the value of, having an honest conversation about money and what they can realistically start with as initial deposit, coming up with a financial plan to help them move forward, whether it be for bankruptcy, what's the initial deposit, and then what can they do on a weekly or biweekly basis towards the balance. Family law, what's the initial retainer or deposit they're paying, and then recurring billing payments for weekly, biweekly. For criminal law, what's the deposit, which depends on their income and the timeline of the case. Typically they shoot for 20 to 25% instead of half down, and then do a recurring billing payment that gets paid off in the first 3 or 4 months. Within the timeline of the case, but usually 3, 4, 5 months, somewhere in that range. But in any case, it's figuring out what can you do, what's the plan, what makes sense. And then great. What I can do then is go ahead and take down your base information, start your intake process, and then we can go and get started work on your case. What's the spelling of your name? What's your address? What's your date of birth? What's your phone number? Okay, for that initial deposit, did you want to do that on a debit card, credit card? We can also set up on a bank draft. Which one works best for you? And then processing that payment. And
again, this is just maybe specific to estate planning, but a very high percentage of them either have the money or don't right then. And a low percentage of them, and we do offer them plans. So if it's $1,800 for a Medicaid trust, and say, okay, if you can't handle that right now, or you don't necessarily want to, can you pay? We try to make it so that they have just about completed payments by the time they get their drafts, because at that point they've got the final product they can go execute essentially. We still plan on reviewing and revising it with them and helping them with the signing, but as soon as they get it, they're under no obligation to contact you again. They can just go execute and file it and do whatever they want. But I'd say every other month, probably out of maybe 20 clients a month, we probably have, what would I say, maybe one who gets on a payment plan and says, okay, here's $300, and call or text me on the 1st of next month, and I'll pay the rest, or I'll pay another half.
Yep.
And I haven't run into a single situation yet where they know exactly what they're going to have and exactly when. So I have not automated that yet. I do give them that option, but it's so rare at this point that I talk about it when they want to talk about it, and that's about it.
Okay. Mr. Heyman, you have a question calling in from the great state of Colorado, doing criminal DUIs out there. Lon, how can we assist?
All right. I'll be in touch, Lon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good. I hope to hear from you. Hopefully not as a client on a DUI partying out here in Colorado. I also do, general criminal and DUI, and I get a whole lot of fantastic leads from Unbundled. And Unbundled recently expanded into traffic leads, which they had been planning to do for years. So I'm partaking in that as well. My question is that, well, a little background. I live in Colorado. I've been here for 25 years, raised a family here, built my practice, solo criminal defense. But I'm from New York, and I want to go back a lot more. I want to go back enough that maybe I would have one foot in Colorado and one foot in New York. And I have family there. They have a place. I have a lot of people there. I wouldn't have a problem having a place to work. But I want to set up a practice there. So I wanted to maybe just put out a little picture of how I see this. And maybe you can tell me if I'm missing a whole lot, or, you know, what are some one or two key things that I also need to put on my list. I'm thinking I need to waive in as a lawyer, which I luckily can do from Colorado pretty easily, I believe. Then I have to have an address and a Google My Business listing, just so people can know I'm legitimate. And a corollary of that, though, is I have to figure out if I can get them to see my history of reviews in Colorado, or I just have to start from scratch there. So people, I'm sure you've had the experience, go through Unbundled, but they want some other third party to legitimize you. So maybe they go to Google and they look at your reviews. So that's why I'm concerned about that. But then I'm thinking I hopefully get Unbundled to send me leads in New York. And then I set some time. So I'm awesome. Fantastic. And then I would be there periodically and just start working. But what am I missing there? Is there anything else? Obviously, I have to have a place to meet clients who want to meet in person. In criminal, you can't do entirely virtual, but I can do a lot of it virtually. But I have to see them at court and meet with them sometimes, certainly if we're going to go to a hearing or a trial. So I can't do it entirely. But so I have to have a virtual office where there's also maybe some conferences or something. But what am I missing?
I guess depending on the area of practice and how many times is it going to be mandatory that you either meet in person or appear in court with them or for them? I guess that's going to depend. But as far as estate planning goes, I mean, what I've learned in New York is when we reboot and fire back up there, it's more of a, we're going to go straight away with, here's how the virtual experience works. It's a lot like in person. That first one, though, it's 2 appointments. The first one's going to be a call or Zoom. I'm going to get all your information, everything I need to create your documents, make sure they're according to your wishes. And once you have a chance to review those and we schedule the signing, I'm going to send you a mobile notary. We're going to skip straight to that. We're not going to bother with trying to figure out whether or not, well, it's a long story, but either straight to a mobile notary and just build that into your pricing. And essentially you're selling them paperwork at that point. The paperwork's put together correctly. They need them executed. So the mobile notary is going to go to them, and any filings. So you need some of that paperwork back so you can do the filing. So whether you have the mobile notary take it and scan it in, or maybe have the client do it, I don't think you're missing too much. I try to keep it simple, mainly just due to necessity. Wasn't trying to streamline anything just at first. It just only had so much time. So let's just keep this very simple. You're getting your paperwork. We're going to help you execute it. And then we're going to somehow file what we need to out of that paperwork. And that's it. So at this level of estate planning and knocking out, whether it's their probate or just putting together a will or powers of attorney, at this level, they need the paperwork and they need it executed properly and maybe need help filing something, but that's it. There's not an ongoing engagement. There's not monthly or yearly fees. We very rarely do trusts that have anything of that nature or roping in a third party to quote unquote manage it. At the demographics that come through with unbundled prospecting, most of them need bread and butter type planning. Here's what traditionally we all learned as young people, that, hey, you either have a will or you don't, right? Well, with a will, that's sort of a ticket to court. Somebody's going to have to go probate that. And the half step up, I tell clients, hey, just a one step further is the most popular plan there is. That's a revocable trust plan. And what that says is, if I pass, my wife just moves on with her life. And during a time of loss and grieving, she does not have to go to court. And then one day when she passes, same thing for the kids. No one needs to go to court. You just move on.
Yep.
And I try to keep it as simple as possible. And speaking of, there's so many times you want to download information on a client because, hey, here's 3 or 4 things you really need to know. And they don't necessarily need to know all the options. In fact, you might be confusing things. Just running it's too much information. You're hitting them with a waterfall. It makes a lot more sense to tell them the most common, accurate thing that they could do for a win-win situation.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing I would add as well, Lon, is, if you're going to be bridging the gap between the 2 jurisdictions, especially for criminal, is I would be looking for a similar kind of counsel relationship in New York. So that if you happen to want to be over in Colorado and maybe don't want to be taking certain cases, then you can create that contract relationship and have a fee arrangement with that attorney such that they could handle some of those matters either for you, or you could, assign certain cases to them, or, like initially when you enroll them, the conversation becomes around this is what our firm does. This is how we operate. This is the way we go, that this is the attorney that's going to be, the lead attorney on your case. But, I'm also a managing attorney here. I'm assisting you. So it's a little bit of a conversational shift in terms of like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm Lon, I'm the attorney, versus this is our firm. This is how we operate. This is what we believe. This is how we're going to represent you, and so forth. So that and then the lead attorney for your case is going to be X, Y, Z. So shifting that conversation to be thinking more in terms of and then that gives you the option to, assign the case straight to the attorney there. Or if you're representing a client, you could potentially have another attorney take over a case. And so that gives you a little bit more flexibility and optionality and choice while you're kind of in this transitionary period, whether you're going to do Colorado and New York, or you're going to kind of slowly work your way over to New York. Having relationships on both sides, actually, in Colorado and New York, would probably be helpful just in terms of giving you some more options to service some clients when you may or may not be there. And I will mention that, as a resource for any of our unbundled attorneys, we have dedicated team members that will help any of our attorneys, any of you, develop a hiring plan, develop a job description and a job ad, create, like an actual job ad for the position that you have, and then help you post those ads on Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs, whatever platform you want to use to start sourcing the talent, start getting applications across your desk of interested attorneys that want to work for you guys and work some cases for you, whether it be contract or associate. That could also be paralegals as well. So it's something that we're here to resource you on, so that if you want to build a team and get more attorneys involved to help out with some of these cases, or get more support for the work that you're doing, we can kind of help you out with getting some of those initial lifts of that hiring process going to start sourcing some talent to help you out.
Yeah, and it really.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave and Wade. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Of course, my man.
By the way, Unbundled already helped me find a legal secretary through Indeed, so I'll apply those skills. You make me realize I'll need one in New York, and I appreciate the advice.
Absolutely, man. As always, my friend.
So I have a question, if I may, just real quick. As I know, Wade, you talked about multi-jurisdictional practice, and Juan talked about waiving into New York, and I've looked into this as well. Like, I'm establishing a practice in Texas, and I can open, even though I'm licensed in New Mexico, I don't have to worry about getting licensed in Texas to have a law practice in Texas. I just can't practice law in the courts of Texas. So has that been a similar experience for you as well, Wade?
The way I've learned it and what I found is that you need somebody at least of counsel on roster to start taking payments for things you're going to do in that state. So at least having an counsel arrangement, I would at least start there, if not bring somebody on board. With the counsel leaves you some flexibility. At that point, really, it's going to come down to finding the person you trust at a, not only a cost you like, but the, I guess, where they're at and where you're at, there's going to be a negotiation. Am I good with doc prep? Let's do your doc prep, and that's going to count enough for this particular situation. And in estate planning, it does. How much do they have to really engage the client at that point? Not terribly much. But if someone's going to be handling a bankruptcy for you or DUI or something, it'll come down to at what point is it cost effective? You just find that right person who seems pretty reliable and go for it.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, look, great questions, everyone. And most importantly, thank you to Wade for taking some time here to explain some of the nuts and bolts that make a virtual practice possible. And, whether people, again, want to practice from home and work remotely and be location independent. We've got some unbundled attorneys that I'm imaging one of our attorneys out of Washington that also has a house in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, and has a team of contract lawyers all across the state of Washington, as well as a lot of virtual staff. And he'll often, work for, a month or 2 or 3 from Cabo San Lucas because he doesn't handle the representation in court for a lot of the cases. Okay. He's just kind of built his firm where he kind of enrolls the clients and then has a team of contract attorneys and associates in certain cases, but primarily contract lawyers of counsel that work the cases from there. And so he will work remotely from other parts of the world at times. So that may or may not be part of your aims in terms of how you want to run, but there are going to be situations where you're going to have folks that want to just transact with you virtually, or need to just do it over the phone. And so I really appreciate you, Wade, kind of like overviewing all the different steps of how to get that document signature, how to do that enrollment over the phone, get that card, get that information, how to intake the client, then have that those documents and forms in completed, and potentially build a team to do this where that you may not be handling 100% of the work or even the majority of the work from that point forward. So this is
and I would add to that, if you can find somebody at a reasonable price who's got a little bit of experience in estate planning, most of our clients, we are not talking about pretty complex pictures. Most of our clients, we're talking about somebody, if you've got a year or 2 experience, if you find this person, that's probably enough to get a revocable trust done and file the deeds correctly. And then that's it. The engagement's over. You can find someone at a reasonable price like that, then there's no reason you couldn't just start tomorrow.
Yep, exactly. I think one of the things that it seems like so many attorneys have a little bit of resistance around taking the step to start interviewing and hiring new people, new attorneys. I mean, it's just like, it's an area of discomfort. And so it's important to also remember that you can start interviewing candidates and attorneys and just explore conversations with folks about potentials of things that you might want to do. And you don't have to pull the hiring trigger. And I think that's a good process for any attorneys to engage that are considering taking the practice from A to some next letter, D or Z, to starting to having conversations with other potential attorneys that they could work with or paralegals or what have you. So you can start imaging the possibilities, because when you start to have productive conversations with, I'm just going to mute you there, Tony. You start having productive conversations that are like with attorneys that you really vibe with, and you can find a really nice, kind of win-win situation where maybe they just want to work a few cases, but they don't want to run a practice, or they've got, a part-time position with a firm or part-time associate position, but they just need some extra cases. And you can find these really nice, or they're just semi-retired and just want to work a few and don't want to deal with, the overhead of running a ship and deal with the enrollments. And maybe they're not comfortable with sales. There's so many different circumstances in which you can really find exceptional win-wins where attorneys are very, very happy to be getting this kind of extra work or just that amount of work. And that meets their needs and will also meet your needs as well. And when you start to have these conversations, it can be very energizing about possibilities for your firm. So would encourage everybody to take that first step.
I like that take. First, I think it's correct as far as finding exactly the candidate you want, but also just exploring what they do. We ended up, our attorney in Georgia, basically, we were going to start there with the estate planning leads. But what I found out in talking to her is that she is capable of something very similar in the fact that it's paperwork and it can be done for anyone all over the state. It just happens to be it comes on the back end of a divorce, a QDRO, qualified domestic. So not every divorce attorney handles this, or that engagement is sort of over and the relationship is done, because turns out something like 80% of divorce attorneys real transactional, and they don't follow you through the case. You're done. If there's anything else you need, in some cases, there is a retirement account out there that needs a particular set of paperwork done. And so we're going to jump in on that. So that sells for a little bit north what we would normally sell trusts for in Georgia. Maybe Unbundled can start marketing and offer that. I had a third party fire that up, and we're getting, I guess, similar prices. I would think you could probably get better with your networks, but at reasonable prices. And at the end of the day, it's just more paperwork that sells for $2,500 and can be done anywhere in the state.
Amazing, man. Yeah. Well, this has been really encouraging, Wade. Thank you so much for taking the time and kind of maybe opening up the doors of possibilities and thinking, that's ultimately, like, there's just barriers in a lot of our minds of like, oh, could we even do that? Is that even possible? Like, how would that look? And could I, take my revenues from here to here? And how would I go about doing that? And you've really given a lot of really, really helpful information on how to bridge to that next level of possibility. So I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
I hope so, and I really appreciate what Unbundled does. I'm trying to do, it makes it possible for, like, your guy in Cabo. Is it Cabo? Is that right? Yeah. He's got a place down there. It makes it possible, and I would like to repeat what some of your guys are doing in Dallas with DUI and probate. But I also, it's very important, my wife and I, that we're available as much as possible. I'm not going to grow into a situation where 80 hours a week I'm just not here. It's going to be quite the opposite, actually. So I'm going to be here most of the week, and whether it's here or whether we're doing something else, so basically be with family and just engaging clients as much as possible, whether we're in the car or wherever we are. This happens quite a bit, and I imagine by December it'll be for estate planning, probate, and criminal. We'll be driving to dance classes and talking to somebody that needs DUI representation. And okay, do you have your card on you? I'll pull over and take that. And okay, we'll see you either at the office or send you paperwork, whatever needs done. But I think some of it comes down to what Dave keeps stressing is correct. Get a workflow in place and stabilize it. Because at some point, your personal workload capacity in your organization is just going to explode and be a huge mess if that is not in place early. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely key. But the important thing is that explosion is available if you want it. Yes. So, yes. It's available for criminal and DUI as well. We've got a lot of lawyers that are kind of building a network within a network of counsel relationships and kind of just figure out the deal that makes sense for both attorneys and what's going on. So, we got a lawyer in California that covers like almost like a good half of California now. He's got counsel relationships all throughout the state for DUI and traffic as well. So it's all available. You got to have your systems, and also make sure you've got a good mind of, shifting from being the technician, like the person that's actually representing clients and doing the actual legal work, to being more of an entrepreneur, in the sense that you're building relationships with attorneys and kind of focusing on what really brings in the most value. One of the most valuable aspects is enrolling the clients and getting the clients signed on for the service. Obviously, most of our attorneys understand the business model that functions and how to deliver that access point and get people on payment plans and so forth. And so once you've mastered that capability, where you can acquire a client for, hundreds of dollars that are worth cases that are worth, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or more, that gives a lot of margin to be able to, deliver value for a contract attorney as well. And that's where we see a lot of these relationships being really fruitful is, the cost of acquisition isn't that high, and that gives lots of margin to, pay another attorney, well for that work, and creates a nice win-win for everybody. So that's what kind of enables that next level of growth from there. Yeah, what Dave's saying, I think about putting all that together, it is extremely important to sort of envision it, whether it's a different practice area or that it's important to envision your day. What does your day look like? Because you've got to, first things first, you got to tell yourself that you're that guy right now. It's not, subconscious doesn't work that way where I'll be that guy in the future. If I sort of work towards it, you might as well be saying I am not that guy right now. Mm-hmm. So do I run a multi-state practice? Is this all virtual? Do I have the free time? You have to decide that up front. And that brainstorming tends to work a lot faster, whether you contact Unbundled or a new idea pops into your own head. It tends to be faster, more accurate if you've decided that's what you're doing.
Well, remember, all of them attorneys, you have a dedicated support attorney that's here to
Yeah.
to kind of resource your success and have these conversations alongside you to set the vision and set some goals and get some aims for your practice and what you want to achieve, both from a financial standpoint, but also, as Wade's talking about, from a lifestyle standpoint. Lifestyle design. That's one of the most important things to think about when you're running a business of law. Is, well, I can make a lot of money, but also, what is that going to enable me? Do I want to, you don't necessarily want to be working yourself into an 80-hour-a-week job.
Sure.
So that's really the where the design, the structure, the right systems, the right tools, the right workflows are going to be able to enable you to increase your income, but also not necessarily, dig yourself into a hole of work. And that takes a lot of conscious thinking and process development. And, our support attorneys are really experienced with, working alongside attorneys like Mr. Goertz to scale things up. So feel free to reach out to your support attorney, or reach out to us if you don't have one assigned right now. And we'll be happy to work alongside you to bring in that next level of growth for your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Unbundled has helped me. Jack, it's been a lot of help. And we've even roped in someone to help post on Indeed. And that was a little help. I haven't found anything yet that I need some advice on, and Unbundled just had zero direction on what to do about it. I haven't found any of that yet. So that'd be my first stop, whether it's what does this up counsel situation really look like? What stage should I point this at first? And it's all very doable.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, like, as I said again, thank you again, Wade, for taking the time. Looking forward to hanging with you in Dallas and laughing
Sunday.
at our ridiculous golf swings. We have local meetups sometimes as well for community members. So looking forward to doing that in Dallas coming up here shortly. And thanks everyone else for participating in this Fireside Chat. We're going to be doing it, roughly monthly going forward. So we got another one on deck next month with a bankruptcy attorney out of Connecticut, and he's going to be talking through how he's been converting 50 to 65% of his leads into paying clients consistently, day in, day out, for a very long time. We figured it was about 2/3, but he wanted to undercut it and under promise and over deliver in terms of the conversion. But he's very astute, has a great follow-up process, great enrollment process. So we'll be unpacking that next month for bankruptcy attorneys. Anyone else wants to learn really how to master that consultation and get more clients signed on. But for now, thanks again for participating, and we'll see y'all on the next Fireside Chat.
All right. Thank you for having me, Dave. It's been great.
Yep. Thanks, Wade. Cheers, buddy. See you in a couple days.
Cheers.
Bye now.
Thank you.